Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth Podcast. I'm Jack Smith,
I'm Shrikar Gendern.
And I'm Anish Gupta.
and today we've got a couple topics to discuss. You can look down, and Anish, right there, if you're on YouTube, he's on a different camera. First of all, Anish, you say hi to the camera. It's a little bit weird, but hey, we hope you
Yeah,
guys like
it's
it. But
definitely
football-wise, new topics. We've got the Julio Jones situation, everything that's been going on for the past couple weeks. We haven't talked about it yet. We were kind of waiting and hoping he'd be traded, and we'd have a little bit more to talk about. But with that being the kind of the thing that's dominated the past week, we got to bring it to you guys. Talking about some teams rumored to be in the mix for possible trade. Talking about what unfortunately happened on Undisputed, and all of that. And then we'll move on. We'll talk about Todd Gurley. He's visiting with the Lions, and maybe if that signals a new trend in the NFL. And then we'll finish it out. Jay Cutler had some interesting words about Justin Fields that we'll dig into and give our own opinion about the Bears rookie. But to start it off, both of you guys, quick synopsis. What do you think about this Julio Jones situation and what's transpired over the past couple of weeks?
So we have a doc where we just keep like all the stuff we're going to talk about for each episode. And right now we have a bunch of teams on that doc that could be directly linked to a Julio Jones trade. But of those, there's really only like maybe five prominent teams that come to mind. Two of them, the Patriots and the Titans. I think both make a lot of sense. Titans especially. Their number two wideout is Josh Reynolds right now. Yeah. I mean, that's not going to cut it. AJ Brown needs someone, that could really help him out. And I think Julio Jones would be that guy. So in terms of the best fit, I think the Titans are definitely like right up there. The Patriots have just been aggressive all offseason, so it wouldn't really shock me to see Bill Belichick go after Julio Jones. It would be kind of weird, though, because, the Falcons trading their star wideout to the Patriots, it's just kind of a weird 28-3 sort of thing that Falcons fans would just not be able to get over. But I think the Patriots make a lot of sense. The Colts are pretty intriguing, mainly because Chris Ballard, he's just never shied away from making an aggressive trade before, like we saw with DeForest Buckner. We saw it with Carson Wentz this offseason. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to see, Julio Jones traded to the Colts, Chris Ballard, giving up a second, giving up maybe a third. And they also have a lot of cap space, which is obviously something that the Titans are struggling with. And the Titans may have to make a few restructures in order to make a Julio Jones trade happen in the first place. And then finally, just topping it off, two teams in California, the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Chargers. Both of those teams are really, popping out at me. Niners mainly, it's just they don't have the assets. But if they're asking for a second and, if they're not asking for a first, the Niners can make it happen. They have the cap space. Julio Jones would be their wide receiver one next to Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, alongside George Kittle. I think they make a lot of sense. And the Chargers, obviously you want to help Justin Herbert out. So having that trio of Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, that's amazing for Herbert, especially with that revamped O-line. So the Chargers are also an intriguing spot. But that kind of caps it for me. Those are the five teams that I feel should really make a strong push for Julio Jones, and the five teams that really I could see landing him. There are some outsiders, maybe the Packers, maybe the Seahawks. Rams have been in discussions, but I think the Rams pulled out a while ago. So, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with it. I think the Falcons were waiting until today, June 1st, right, to make this trade, just because I think it would help their situation out financially. So I'll end it there. I think those are my five teams in mind.
Yeah, so Shrikar basically just went over every scenario possible.
Yes, sir.
So that leaves a little bit less for us to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. I think so. First off, as someone who, out of us three, who watches Skip and Shannon Undisputed more, I think I watch it more than 95% of people that watch that show. I watch it so much. So when I found out that Julio Jones goes live on call with Shannon Sharp, who's one of my favorite TV personas, I think, ever, that was just so funny, but also so, a little bit like questionable, because people thought oh, did he not know he was live? He wasn't really asked about, he didn't give a true answer. Did he know or did he not? But towards the end, I think he kind of realized. But obviously, people know that Julio's kind of done with Atlanta. There's no terrible bad blood. It hasn't really, because Julio's a quiet guy, but when he said yeah, I'm out of there, I think it was pretty clear cut. But I think in regards to the landing spot, I don't know if Shrikar mentioned the Ravens. That's the one I think is the best fit. Like that, like if you get like Lamar Jackson hasn't had a consistent number one in his 3 years. And obviously everyone's kind of hoping Rashad Bateman can be that. But if you get Rashad Bateman a mentor and a clear-cut wide receiver one, I mean, the sky's the limit for what Lamar Jackson can do, because we've seen a guy like Stephon Diggs help Josh Allen develop. And, as much as you want to bring up his MVP year, I think Lamar still needs to develop as a passer. I think there are some throws that, he tends to make that are just a bit questionable, especially on the run. There were definitely some against the Bills. When I kind of watched that game again, there were just a bunch of questionable throws. And I think, Lamar Jackson is so talented, so great, and Julio Jones can make him that much better. And although as a Browns fan, I would not want to see that, like 100%, please don't do it. It would be the best fit. I also would really love to see him on the Patriots, but I think they've got a lot of wide receivers that they brought in. I don't think they've treated N'Keal Harry yet. So I think
no, but it doesn't. It doesn't look like with the guys they have, he's going to touch the field all that often.
Exactly. I think he could be a good piece. Like if you could utilize him also. Give him some reps at tight. Like he's huge. You could give him some reps at tight end. He was a first round pick for a reason. I think it was in that 2019 draft. So he was picked before Metcalf, picked before Debo. Like picked before McLaurin. Like he had some value coming out of, I believe, Arizona State. So, that could be a potential trade piece. Obviously, I think they got Aguilar. I'm forgetting who else they picked.
Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, Kendrick
Bourne. Well, and then obviously Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith.
But no clear-cut wide receiver one.
Yeah, exactly. They still don't have that, go get a guy, which is why I thought they should go after a Kenny Golladay before they, obviously made all those splurges. But I think, as Shrikar mentioned, that would be a really interesting fit with, Cam or Mac Jones. But the Titans too, I think. Have you guys seen the AJ Brown TikTok?
We've seen it. Yeah.
That's so funny. Like, he's not gotten fined yet. So, hey, keep tampering away. But that would also be incredibly lethal. And I think for a guy like Ryan Tannehill, that would be his, by far his best receiver he's ever had. So, that would be really cool. But I think in regards to Julio himself, I think we can all agree here, he's a consensus top 5 receiver when healthy. Or, you could put him in your top 3. You could even say he's the best when healthy. Like, yeah, he played a few games this year and he still had, I believe, over 85 yards a game. So he is still that good. But I'm going to try and pass it over to Jack, but I'll leave with my final thoughts. I think for one, he is worth more than a second round pick. That is just, I'm going to probably leave it at that. And I'll let Jack, maybe if you want to respond to that and give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, before we get into compensation, I actually have some breaking news. This important PSA is brought to you by Manscaped.com. This is your pubic service announcement and the news you've all been waiting for. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the USA and in Canada. This new trimmer was just released just a few moments ago, and we were one of the first to get our hands on it and share the news. What makes this trimmer different than all other trimmers, you may ask? The Lawnmower 4.0 features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It also gives you the handy ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Also, a new multi-function on and off switch can engage a travel lock created for those road game trips. The 4.0 is also waterproof, so you can groom in the shower and not have to worry about making a mess on the bathroom floor. Also, did I mention wireless charging? I don't think I did. The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. So what are you waiting for? Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with its exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code CHT20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with code CHT20. The link to Manscaped will be in our description and the pinned comment on YouTube and the episode description everywhere else. You can use the code CHT20. You can find it in the description, pinned comment, episode description. It's all there. Get yourself anything on their website, like the 4.0, some awesome t-shirts, some other great products, and use our code for 20% off and free shipping. Anyways, moving on, back to football a little bit.
Service announcement.
A great pubic service announcement.
Shout out to the Manscaped team. They've got some great stuff. Go to their website, shameless plug, go down there, check it out in the description, pin comment. Let us know what you guys think too in the comments, But yeah, CHG20, use our code, down in the description. But for Julio Jones, Anish, I know you say he's worth more than a second round pick, but maybe he's worth more than that as a player, but there's no chance that it's going to end up like that because
I agree, but he's worth more than it, in my opinion.
At his age, I'm not sure he is.
See, okay.
How many more seasons does Julio Jones have in him?
No, that's fair. But if I'm a team for example, LA, right? If I'm a team like LA, or actually no, go Baltimore. If I'm a team like Baltimore, I'm honestly in the cusp of, getting to a Super Bowl. Like they should be in everyone's at least Super Bowl bubble, I think. And if you get a guy like Julio Jones, the sky's the limit for Lamar Jackson. I would give up my next year's first. I would obviously think about it, but like Lamar, Julio, and their running back room, I think, is really good with J.K. Dobbins kind of leading that charge. If you have a guy like Julio Jones and Rashad Bateman and you put Hollywood Brown in the slot,
and they have Sammy Watkins too.
That's such Sammy. I mean, hey, after week 1, I'm just kidding. But, no, but that receiver room, that would be so lethal. Like I would think about it. I agree with I'm one who always argues that first round picks are extremely valuable, but like Julio Jones, even on an injury plagued year, was still one of the most game-to-game productive receivers in the NFL. So
exactly. No, it should be a Super Bowl hopeful. As you said,
who
knows how
for
many
a first round
Julio
pick
has.
That's why when we saw potential trade packages, it was all second round picks. And then I think there was one team that offered a first. I think it was the Titans, like in a Bleacher Report thing I saw. But I mean, if I'm Baltimore, I really think about it. And I don't even know why I'm advocating for this. I don't want it to happen.
You're pulling strong.
See, but teams nowadays, they can get a guy like Rashad Bateman at the end of the first round with their first round pick. They're all young and they're super talented, and you can hit on one like the Vikings did with Justin Jefferson. And
I think, but you're also bringing up a guy who had the best rookie receiver.
No, and I get that, but the potential is always there. And these receiver classes are only getting better and better. 100%. With Julio Jones's age, I'm not sure he's worth the first rounder, and we'll talk about why they're not going to get that. I mean, with the problems that have been brewing in Atlanta, they're having trouble keeping some of their players around. The salary cap problems, they need to offload someone's contract, and people are like, okay, is it Julio or Matt Ryan? And it looks like it's probably going to end up being Julio Jones. And on his side, too, he wants out. And with that call saying, I'm out of there, whether he knew it or not, it was said. And as someone who viewed that as we all have a part in journalism, if Shannon Sharpe didn't tell him and Julio Jones didn't know, that's very wrong in my eyes.
That's bad journalism. Very bad journalism.
And, people will raise the argument that Julio, he's good friends with Shannon. He should have known he's on air that time throughout the week, but you got to tell him.
You can't be prepared for that, though.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, I think it was just a straight up call. I don't think it was necessarily planned. I mean, he wasn't questioned. Like they really didn't, pursue that issue much. So,
it sounded like he was just talking to a friend, which
I'm sure it got squashed. I mean, because they have each other on contact. So Julio knew it was Shannon calling him. It didn't seem like it was planned in the segment. Because the way they construct the show,
it didn't seem planned.
So, I'd probably have to honestly rewatch it to really give you a true statement, because obviously I've watched the show a lot. I know how it's kind of structured, but I mean, for Julio Jones, at least Jack, to what you were saying about how teams can kind of find a receiver in that regard, I completely agree. But I at least Julio, right? And you were saying the Falcons with the cap space. You're right. They have to get rid of one of them. So that I feel like that's why they won't get a first round pick. But you got to admit, him as a player,
that's a first.
Yeah, him as a player, I think
it's just the situation.
Yeah,
it's situation bars for different things.
It's kind of just you're buying someone as opposed to first round picks. You can invest in someone for a long term, and maybe I don't see the value there for a couple more years. I think it would depend by team. The Ravens, sure. The 49ers, no. I mean, the 49ers, with Trey Lance.
The 49ers, for example, the Colts shouldn't do it. Titans honestly shouldn't. Who else?
I think the Titans should.
Personally. The Titans should.
The Titans window is now.
Yeah.
It is now, but you really don't in my opinion, I think they're not going to go past the second round. That's probably their ceiling.
They could if they had Julio Jones.
If they have Julio,
that is true.
who knows?
I'm still iffy on. I think Baltimore for sure. That's like my one team that I would say give up a first. Tennessee, I'm on the cusp of because I don't know if they win that division, and I don't know if they get out the first round. Like I think that's a team that even with Julio Jones, I just don't know how much that could uplift Tannehill, a guy who's kind of I think he's over 30 now. Like he's not really going to get any better. Like a guy like Lamar could.
I don't think it would. I don't think it's more to uplift Tannehill or Lamar. It's just to uplift the offense.
Yeah, the offense. That's true. I mean,
no,
it would,
Titans,
for the Ravens, it would be Lamar. The Ravens, it would be strictly. I mean, for the Titans, you're right. It would be the offense. But
yeah, just keep in mind the Titans. They have a new offense coordinator. It's a new system. So
yeah,
I mean, you obviously want to have a more complete offense. It's just Josh Reynolds as your wide receiver too. It's just not. That's not ideal with a new offense in place.
He was honestly like a wide receiver 4 there. Like he just didn't get that much. I mean, he was the third one, but like Van Jefferson kind of overtook him a little bit.
And they would always throw the tight ends more than him.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would like to note though, Julio Jones has only played with Matt Ryan his entire career.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be different. Like Matt Ryan has been consistently there. Like I don't think he's had, knock on wood, like he hasn't had a major injury. So, I mean, hey, the Falcons, they at pick 4, they basically said who they were keeping and who they were going to get rid of.
Exactly.
On that pick. That's what they, because here's the thing. I mean, we had our jokes off air with me and Calvin Ridley because there was this whole thing about his fantasy football season, but I think he's got the potential to be a top 10 receiver next year. I mean, how about if we were to kind of move on, like I know Julio Jones is eventually going to leave. I mean, what does this mean for the Falcons? Like,
yeah, I was going to say that.
And that void, right? How is Kyle Pitts going to do? I think they're fine. Calvin really showed me a lot last year, being able to do it without Julio Jones. He really stepped up. I think he had like 1,300 yards.
And Atlanta was putting up points. They didn't even when he was out. So, I mean, Kyle Pitts in this offense, you can line him up in the slot. He can easily kind of take over that Julio role in terms of production.
He's going to be Julio from the slot for them. I mean, that's what he's going to do.
I mean, yeah, you're giving Arthur Smith basically a guy like who's more versatile than AJ Brown and arguably more talented. Like, they would line up AJ Brown a lot in different places. And
you're talking about Kyle Pitts being more talented?
Julio?
Yeah.
I think Kyle Pitts is 10 times more talented than AJ Brown. I mean, Kyle Pitts might be the most talented wide receiver or receiving.
Well, obviously we got to see how it translates to the NFL. So I can't
but talent isn't something that needs to train. Like you have talent, whether you're in college or the NFL, you have talent.
I mean, I still want to see how he would. I mean, obviously, at least in college and what he was able to do, he was definitely way more talented. Yeah. But yeah, I think he's also more versatile in my opinion. But AJ Brown was used a lot of places, and you're giving him basically a bigger, arguably stronger and faster guy in Kyle Pitts. So.
Arguably stronger. I don't know about that. He's definitely stronger.
He's definitely stronger. What I meant to say was arguably faster because I think.
Yeah, I don't see that, but I mean, as we're moving into giving more content, one of the things that I know I'm working on is a film review for Kyle Pitts with the Falcons. So I'm not going to try and spoil too much, but all I'll say is, they'd be losing a big red zone threat in Julio Jones, and Kyle Pitts, I think you could argue is a bigger red zone threat than Julio.
Sure. I mean, you could argue, then Julio. I was going to say that, like Julio was never like that quote unquote red zone guy. Like he never, filled up the stat sheet when it came.
I think on a different team he could be that. Red zone guy,
and I think a team that would rely on him a little bit more. The Falcons would run the ball out in the red zone, and Julio's a big distractor in the red zone. Like he's kind of distracting people away from guys like Calvin Ridley or running the ball or throwing to Tevin Coleman out of the backfield when they used to do that. And so I think to close this off a little bit, the Falcons, I think they'll be fine without Julio Jones. I think Kyle Pitts is surplus for them, but without Julio there, he's able to fill a bigger role. So, and then obviously for whichever team gets Julio Jones, they're getting a top 5, arguably top 3, possibly arguably top 1 wide receiver in the league for the next probably 2 or 3 years. I mean, so there's certain teams that fits guys like the Ravens, that fits, in my opinion, the Titans. It doesn't, however, fit the 49ers. I don't think it fits the Chargers. Maybe fits the Colts, but I would argue probably not.
I don't know. I'm banking on a Pittman breakout year. So
well, you're also banking on Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
opening the window.
That's more important.
If you give Carson Wentz Julio Jones, I'm like that would be his best receiver by
he'd be the happiest man in the world.
And he should predict him to win MVP again.
Yeah, no, I won't make me pick him to win MVP, but it would definitely make me a lot more confident in him having a better year than Dak Prescott.
Oh yeah, if you guys missed our last episode, we talked about hot takes.
Yeah,
That
go
was
check
one
out
of
the hot
Anish's hot takes we disagreed with personally.
Yeah,
But
we're keeping on the hype train.
okay,
I
but
still
before we
have
finish
faith
it
in
up,
him.
I
Yeah.
want to hear everyone's prediction. So I'll go. I'll say. I honestly like my Google doesn't really want to let me speak. Nice. But no, sorry for the distraction. I think that my best fit is probably the Ravens. I think I would agree with you there, Anish. It's really hard to predict any of these teams. And
Yeah.
I'll stick since I believe they're the best fit. I think I'll go with the Ravens wanting to improve, getting Lamar another weapon, as well as distracting some people from Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. And their window is now. And I think that kind of with their defense, they're going to have to eventually let some people go. Both on offense, they're not going to be able to keep everyone, and some people are aging. So I think that their window is now, and it would allow Lamar Jackson just another weapon to help them in the playoffs as well, where Julio does have experience. So I'm going to go with them as a prediction, but really I think it's anyone's game at the moment.
Best fit, I'll agree with you there. I'll say Baltimore. Prediction, I'm actually going to say Tennessee. I think they get some restructures done, and I think they're going to be willing to depart with some picks for Julio Jones, and obviously that'll make them a truly complete offense. It's just they seem to have everything like in place for Julio except cap space, and honestly, cap space is the one thing that I'm least worried about. Obviously, assets are higher than that, so I think the Titans would be my prediction, but Julio in Baltimore would be a great fit. I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, so one thing, I think Shrikar kind of mentioned it, but he didn't elaborate. The whole thing with the financial situation after June 1st is that there's less dead money that the team takes. So that's why Atlanta was waiting. Best fit, yeah, as I said earlier, I think it's Baltimore. For prediction, man, that's tough. I really don't want to say Baltimore, so I'm not going to. It would be really interesting to see him in Tennessee. I want the Pats. Just personally, I want Cam Newton to have that type of weapon. But prediction, I think Tennessee. I mean, it's been thrown out in the media a lot. I think it would be, it would be really cool to see AJ Brown's quote unquote tampering work. So that'd be really funny. And obviously Derrick Henry's from Alabama. They were working out together. So yeah, I think Tennessee would be my prediction. Again, it's a big long shot. It's hard to predict these things. I mean, every team should be, and at least should have made a call in regards to who.
Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, that's going to kind of wrap it up on that side.
I'm honestly a little bit surprised that the Browns aren't one of these teams.
Oh, can I give my?
You should have mentioned them.
I immediately, when Julio Jones, the whole news came out, I said that we should think about going after him and getting rid of Odell.
It's an easy
because Odell and Landry are gone after this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Or even flip Landry.
No, 2023, I believe. I think 2023.
So they're heading into their final years next year.
Yeah, I think so. Or Landry might be 2022, but Odell, I think, is 2023. I was saying this, I told you guys earlier, I think they should. I mean, I don't know if they should trade Odell to the Falcons. You're right. You guys kind of shut down that idea. I mean, I still think they could, because I think Odell's contract is kind of similar, and he's
a lot like Ridley, though. I'm not sure how interested the Falcons would be in that.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it could be a resurgence, right, with Matt Ryan and stuff. I mean, a guy like Odell, but yeah, I thought the Browns, if they could get him, that would be really, really interesting. But it would have to be on the expense of Odell, because the two contracts would not work. I mean, you'd have to get Odell's would leave, right? And actually Julio's is cheaper. So that's why I was all for it. I thought we should definitely, at least be in talks, but I don't know. It's just Browns fan base and the front office are very invested in Odell's comeback. I personally am not. Contrary to popular belief amongst the Browns community, I just don't want Baker Mayfield to go again in this trap. I just don't want him to fall in that. And what was working last year was him not being there. So, I mean, and I don't know Julio Jones is going to be the same effect. So, I personally wanted to just trade Odell and have Landry, Higgins, and DPJ be our receiver core. But that was my take on the Browns, in case you guys were on.
So our next topic, we mentioned it earlier. Todd Gurley is visiting with the Lions. He visited earlier these last couple of weeks, which is, interesting because Jared Goff is with the Rams. They played well together, but also because the Lions already have a pretty good running back room. I know they dropped Kerryon Johnson, but with DeAndre Swift there, they've got some pretty good backs. And so we've realized this is kind of signaling a new trend in the NFL. And I'll open the floor for you guys to talk about it. But teams like the Browns, the Colts, the Jags, bringing in multiple running back ones into their room, whether that's, because the running back's a volatile position where they do get hurt and careers are pretty short, or whether they want to just have a lot of weapons in the backfield. I mean, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are running back ones on so many teams across the NFL, but they're both with the Browns, and the Jaguars already had James Robinson, but they draft Travis Etienne, and the Colts with last year they had Naeem Hines and Marlon Mack, but they still draft Jonathan Taylor, and they're all very capable backs. So I want you guys to talk a little bit about, Todd Gurley visiting with the Lions, but mostly the trend that this is kind of signifying and signaling in the NFL.
Well, as you said, there's a mold, and I'm kind of thinking back to last season when the Bucs picked up Leonard Fournette. And I don't know if it was on the podcast or we were discussing who was going to get, how many snaps, like what was the load going to be like. And the Bucs made it so perfect that both of them kind of got that starting role. There was no clear-cut running back one. Maybe you could say playoff Lenny, but really Ronald Jones was, a key factor in that offense.
Yeah, it was pretty split. Or at least one
there was and that's when you bring two running back ones into an offense, because I believe Ronald Jones could have held his own as a running back one that year. If you bring two running back ones and you split it, then magic can happen there, because that running game ultimately, led them to the Super Bowl and helped them win the Super Bowl. So I think teams they're starting to pick up on that, because every Super Bowl winner or every team that finds success, we see a lot of teams just kind of follow some kind of trend that they not necessarily set, but popularized might be the word I'm looking for. So, I mean, Todd Gurley visiting the Lions, DeAndre Swift is still pretty young. And bringing in Todd Gurley, I think he can be a great mentor for DeAndre Swift. And not only that, if you want to split the workload, I think Detroit is starting to build something there that's reminiscent of the Bucs running game. And I think it could work, honestly, because Todd Gurley still has, he's still got game left in the tank. He's not done. So honestly, when I see these teams like the Jags, when they pick up ETN, or, the Browns have already established it with Chubb and Hunt, I kind of think back to the Bucs and how much success they found, off of two running back ones, splitting the workload, and, how much that helped them drive that Super Bowl run. And I think it can be so important for an offense, because run game, it's going to be more and more valued over time.
I mean, I even go further back. I think there are two teams that you forgot to mention. One is the 2019 Niners, and the other was the 2017 Eagles.
Okay, here's the thing about the Niners.
It's not running back ones. It's not even about that. It's about running. It's kind of a running back by committee thing. Mm-hmm. And I think people are just using more talented running backs.
No, for sure. That's where it stems from. But the recent trend that's going on now is multiple running back ones, which is why I brought up.
Well, I think it's weird to say it like that, because it's you're trying to collect the best running back possible to put in your committee. I think that's just what it is. But I would much rather have Kareem Hunt as my second running back than Tevin Coleman. That would just be
And that's exactly. It
stemmed from that and grew into something else. That's what I'm trying to say. They're
investing in multiple running back ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The old trend used to be wide receiver course. You got your wide receiver 1, your wide receiver 2, your wide receiver 3. You're talking now about teams that have multiple wide receiver ones. You mentioned that you don't even have Justin Jefferson over Adam Thielen yet, and they're both easily wide receiver ones.
They're both wide. Yeah,
they're building a wide receiver course. Look at
Ridley,
the Seahawks
and just at the Falcons.
And Metcalf, both wide receiver ones. And
I agree. I think it's just honestly a reflection of how talent is just evolving in the NFL. I think that's one big thing. But yeah, as you were saying with Todd Gurley, I was actually still a believer in him. I remember we were talking about how he was still kind of productive in his last year in LA. I remember saying this was before Atlanta. So, I mean, obviously he had a down year in Atlanta. He, was still battling that injury, just didn't play well, or at least up to the expectations of at least what, people could have thought. But with Detroit, I mean, this is going to be a weird running back room, because, it's ironic. I actually compared Travis Etienne to DeAndre Swift in my running back video. And a lot of people kind of questioned the comparison, but then when I kind of explained it, they were like, oh, okay, good explanation. That's why they play really similar. So I think it would be a really interesting backfield. Say they get him, right? Obviously Goff and Gurley. Sure, that's a good, chemistry, but I want to see how DeAndre Swift develops. I think he's got a lot of potential, and it would be really weird to, see, because like you said, running backs have a short fuse. It's hard to utilize them for a long period of time. But this whole running back by committee, or at least multiple running back ones, however, whatever you want to call it, it's great because running backs have fresh legs in this situation. Then you don't always have to necessarily ride a, bell cow running back, because not everyone is Derrick Henry. Not everyone gets better as the game goes on, or Nick Chubb, even Nick Chubb to some extent, like he gets better as the game goes on, but not every running back can just take, 28, 30 touches a game and be consistently great at each touch. So, this whole running back by committee or running back one, it's actually back in, the old days, right? They had the flanker and like the fullback, right? In, old NFL offenses, they had two people in the backfield.
Yeah.
A lot of offenses are establishing that. But except, same position as a halfback, tailback, that type of thing with two, separate running backs. I think it's a great, trend that we're seeing, because it makes offenses so much more productive, and it also makes the running back, at least, it's more fresh legs, right? Like, for receivers who have to play 75 to 100% of the snaps, you can see them get tired. You can see them not run their route as crisp, or not being able to, beat press coverage, or, essentially get off the line of scrimmage as quickly. But with running backs, right? If you put a fresh one in, third, fourth quarter, can a linebacker who's going to probably play 75 to 100% of the snaps, he's not going to be able to, contain a Travis Etienne who's fresh in the fourth quarter. Like, you're not going to contain that type of speed. So that's so lethal for a lot of offenses. And I think it's a great trend that we're seeing. I think just this Lions being interested in Gurley just kind of reflects what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I think it's great for everyone except fantasy owners, especially of people who have dynasty leagues with DeAndre Swift. But I think the interesting thing about the Bucs, Shrikar, is the way they kind of used the two is Ronald Jones was kind of the lead starter back throughout the entire regular season. And then they shifted in the playoffs, and they gave Leonard Fournette, who was way fresher.
They kind of rode the hot hand. Also, Jones got injured. So
they did, but being able to do that, they had fresh legs in the playoffs. Because I think it was, you could see there was a little bit more of the shift to Leonard Fournette. And even if it was based off injury, he was more fresh and he was able to take over in the playoffs. I also think it shows what kind of backs are a little bit more valuable in the playoffs, which are the experienced runners. And also I think power running is just a little bit more important,
because the game will slow down. The game
slows down, and when you need those one or two
colder
yards,
weather.
And all speed back won't really do.
No, and you just literally, as a perfect case study of that, look at the goal line during the Super Bowl. I mean, Ronald Jones couldn't punch it in, but Leonard Fournette, big bruiser back, is able to get into the end zone. I mean, I
can't even name the last time an elusive back really took over. I mean, you could argue Damian Williams, right?
Yeah, but he didn't. But did he really?
Christian McCaffrey in the indoor stadium 4 years ago. That game performance always just stands out to me. But I really can't remember. You're right. It's power running, because colder weather, you need those 1 or 2 yards. They're going to get it for you, right? You can give it to those type of running backs. And I think with the Bucs specifically, they kind of wrote, I remember, because I had both of them in fantasy. Yeah. It was so ironic. One guy would go off and they'd ride the hot hand. Then Leonard Fournette would go off. They try and ride that hot hand. So, it just gave the Bucs a lot of versatility. For the Browns, they do it differently. They do this, Hunt is a third down back, and then and then they'll do, passing situations, that type of thing. Niners definitely did it by a huge committee, and they're trying to bring another committee in this year, right? I think they drafted 2 running backs,
Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what they're, what's brewing over there, but it looks similar to what the Ravens kind of did too, right? With Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram.
And it's not only a committee, there's still, it's depth more than anything, because Jeff Wilson just went on IR. So
I mean, it's the running back. I think it just goes to show that the running back position, it's the position itself is, obviously very heavy utilized, but the running back players are easily replaced and just have a short fuse. I think that's when Jack gives his whole running back spiel, I think that's what he's trying to say, not the position, but
I mean, the running back position to an offense is very important, but a singular running back,
you don't want to put all your money.
You can draft one in the second round if you want. Yeah. You're still going to go after a guy like Todd Gurley.
They're just it's so easy for them to get injured. I mean, out of all the positions, I mean, because the quarterback's going to get, hurried, a little bit often, sure, gets sacked, on average 2 to 3 times a game. Okay. But a running back gets hit every time they touch the ball.
Full speed.
Plus
Yeah,
the risk
like
of non-contact. So
it's full contact every time, and
Yep.
especially in between the tackles, it's really, really, big blows. So, I mean, it's very easy to get injured for a running back. I mean, we've seen it happen so many times to, even the best of the best. So, and like a guy like Saquon Barkley, right? We're still unsure, is he, this is two big injuries now. So, right, like this could be very, devastating long term. I mean, like we don't even know. So it sucks to have these running back questions, but I mean, I think it's a good trend that we're seeing.
Yeah, and then to move on to our final topic of the day, a lot of Bears fans are really excited about what they have in Justin Fields, but Jay Cutler's saying they should maybe slow their brake or hit the brakes a little bit, slow their roll. He thinks that the Bears should not start Fields week 1, which, after they drafted him, it was kind of just assumed Justin Fields week 1 starter for the Bears, but Jay Cutler believes they should, I think to directly quote him, just let him watch. He said, when I was, I forget exactly where it was. It was an ESPN, I think it was podcast episode. But
it was radio.
He was saying that it's like, he's like, what is 10 games? What's going to go wrong if you just sit him down for 10 games? Because Cutler admits during his rookie season, he was not prepared. He didn't know what was going on. This was all very new to him. And he thinks that sending rookie QBs into a bad situation can ruin them forever. And maybe he doesn't believe in the offensive line. Maybe he doesn't believe in the weapons or the coach in Chicago. But I think that, to move on, what do you guys think, first of all, about what Jay Cutler said? But about the situation yourself, do you think that Justin Fields should start week 1? Do you think he shouldn't start this whole season? Where are you on that range from week 1 to week 16? And you guys can let us know down in the comment section as well. But Trigger, why don't you start us off?
Well, see, with Jay Cutler, I kind of understand where he's coming from, because with this whole question of when will Fields start, it really depends on who you ask. My only problem with sitting him for 10 games, he said, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are under a lot of pressure. Yep. So 10 games, it's just,
well, why don't you elaborate?
Their jobs are on the line this season. Like, unless it depends on when Fields starts, obviously, but if you're going to start Andy Dalton for the first 10 games, I'd say your job's on the line. So if I'm the Bears, I think it all comes down to training camp. I think if Fields comes into training camp and shows that he's just as good as Dalton or even better, I say start him. Just give him the keys to the offense. I'd say have confidence in the guy you traded up to draft and you gave up all these assets for, especially when you're being pressured by Bears fans. You're being pressured by the media. Obviously, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy aren't going to pay a lot of attention to that because it's what they internally believe is right for their organization. But you traded up, you gave away valuable assets, and you're going to sit him for 10 games, especially when, you could be fired by the end of the year. That is not a risk that, I'd take. I would, if it all depends on training camp, as I said, if Fields comes in and outplays Dalton or shows that he is right on Dalton's level, I say have faith in him and start him. And I know week 1 against the Rams, it's a tough place. So if you wanted to wait a little bit, I'd say week 4 against Detroit is the prime place to start him. But I mean, I just throw him in week 1 if you're really going to do that, just because those are still valuable reps against one of the NFL's best defenses. I still think it's a good place to start him. I still think it's a good place for him to learn. Although it will be a little rough. I think that's just part of growing pains. But honestly, it as I said, training camp. Just keep your eyes out on training camp.
There was a lot to unpack. Okay, first off, I would never say like week 4 is when you start, because then that puts to the quarterback that's starting, you're basically saying, hey, you only have 3 weeks. So that I disagree with. Like, I think do a timeline, like even with when Tua randomly, got put in, or at least the media kind of found out randomly that Tua was going to start. There was definitely something brewing over time. It wasn't.
No, I'm saying if Dalton is underperforming in those first 3 weeks.
Okay, I get that, but yeah, like you shouldn't say like week 4 is when you start. And then for Justin Fields, at least for this, what Jay Cutler is saying, I actually contrary to a lot of what Bears fans are thinking, I actually agree with what Cutler's saying, because here's why. Or at least 10 games is just an example. But I mean, this narrative, I'm pretty sure all 3 of us would hate on the Chiefs for what they did, because what they did was they traded up to 10 spots to get Patrick Mahomes. And then, everyone was like, why? They just made the playoffs, Alex Smith was doing fine, right? And then they weren't going to play him. So this is the same narrative we're getting thrown out. Now, I'm not going to say Justin Fields is going to do what Patrick Mahomes did. I'm not saying that, but they're doing a similar path. And like you're right. Week 1 against the Rams, this is a whole thing about confidence. Like if you throw him in there and he absolutely does terrible, think about what's going to happen. Like, the media is going to rush to it. It's just how it is. I know some will actually pump the brakes and say, hey, it's one game. But what's going to happen. It's going to be a huge hit on his confidence. And obviously that is a huge place to play in. And it's a very tough place to play in because the Rams
It's a primetime game too.
Yeah, they're a certified bona fide contender. And you're throwing him into this fire against a ferocious defense, albeit they lost some players. You're still going to have to go against Aaron Donald with an offensive line that's still rebuilding. That's one thing. And if you sit him for 10 games, look at the quarterbacks that have succeeded. Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes both sat at least the majority of their rookie years before they got their first. Patrick Mahomes was obviously the garbage time game in week 17, and Lamar was 10 games out. So, at least a little bit of the time to learn it, right? And OTAs are still not fully in session, right? Like the voluntary ones, a lot of people are missing them, a lot of key players. So that's one thing. And also, I think training camp, even if he does really well, like for example, Baker Mayfield did really well in training camp, he was still presented as the backup role. Same thing with Justin Herbert. So training camp, I doubt will have that much of an impact. I think they've already kind of put their plan in place. I think the third thing is what you were saying, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are on the hot seat. I actually don't think so. Like I agree
with you.
Because here's what he did. He bought himself time by picking Fields. Because
that's why I'm saying it depends on Fields' development.
No, but not the first year. Because even if Fields sucks, you can just say it was a bad rookie year. You have time. And this is by far the most talented quarterback that Matt Nagy has. So that bought them enough time. Also, the end of last year, I don't care what you say, they had a really good end towards last year. They were 5-7. They won 3 of their last 4, and Trubisky was actually really solid. Like the Bears had actually one of the best offenses, according to analytics and according to paper. They did, and they made the playoffs. So Pace and Nagy bought themselves a lot of time, or at least a decent amount of time.
Yeah, and especially if they sit Fields for a while, that means that like if they fire him after he's only played a couple games, that means that all of that development, it's gone to waste because they're just going to install.
Now he has to.
Well, but here's the thing: we've seen how Nagy developed Trubisky. So what if we see that same path with Fields?
But they won't fire him after a year.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that. Like even with Herbert, they really didn't want to. Like,
and it's not just Nagy; it's Ryan Pace too.
No, but but I think it's a tough call because at 5-7 they were like, okay, Pace and Nagy are essentially out the door. But then they had this resurgence, and then Say what you want. I thought the trade was good. I thought what they did.
I thought the trade was good.
It's good for Pace too.
Yeah,
especially because they nailed their first 2 picks.
For the Bears. Like I think, worst case scenario, the pick. I mean, fine. It's not going to be that good like what the Giants are getting. So, and you also only give up like a 4th and a 5th for a potential franchise changer. So I thought the trade was fine, and also bought them time. Like that was one thing, and we can't deny this is Nagy's most talented guy. Like I mean. He won Coach of the Year in 2018 as a first-year head coach, right? Like, and we usually see a lot of young head coaches. At least the trend is that they win it. But that was Trubisky's second year. He did make the Pro Bowl, albeit a little bit, what do you call it? Outlandish.
Undeserved.
Yeah, but he had a good year. Like, say what you want. He had a pretty good year. So I think Nagy with Fields would be really interesting, and you can't deny the weapons that he has. But there was one part of the quote too, Jack. I don't know if you mentioned it, but he said like Andy Dalton would be serviceable, or at least
more than serviceable.
Sorry. So, I mean, I honestly like agree with that. Like Andy Dalton isn't like a scrub. Like he played pretty well down the stretch for Dallas too. He went 4-2. He had a good. I think he had the same touchdown to interception ratio as Dak. So, in those.
But it's the Dallas offense versus the Chicago offense.
I mean, the weapons, I guess, Robinson and Mooney. Running backs, I mean,
it's not as good as Dallas.
O-line is honestly similar because Dallas had a lot of injuries. So I would, and Dalton's used to the cold weather in Cincinnati. So I would honestly say I think it's not as big of a transition as you're making it out to be. I mean, I personally think like Dalton or Fields, neither is going to take this team over the top first year. Like,
no, it'll take time. It'll take time.
Yeah, but I think
that's where I'm actually going to change my point. I actually agree with you guys now. You've convinced me that Nagy and Pace aren't on the hot seat, but. More so, actually,
no.
Pace could be on the hot seat,
but they're not.
But they're not going to get fired.
No, not after this
year. They're not going to get
fired. They bought them because like at 5-7, I mean, and obviously, like Jack and I are good friends with Chris. I've talked a lot with like the Bears community. Like they wanted him gone so bad at that point, right? Because they lost 6 in a row, I believe, after going 5-1.
Yeah.
So it was a bad time, right? But what do you call it? Like they honestly turned it around and said, okay, we're kind of buying into this whole Chicago narrative. I mean, like they have starred for a quarterback. Like, have you guys seen the jersey sales?
Yeah.
3 of the top 5 are
it's all Fields
variants of Justin Fields jerseys. Like that's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we're in kind of a dead time, and the dead time in the NFL season. It sucks, or in the NFL year, it sucks.
Well, it makes sense because when is the last time the Bears had a true franchise
exactly
guy?
right? Yeah.
And the Nickelodeon MVP actually.
Like it's flashy
MVP
quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So like, like Rex Grossman and Mitch Trubisky, Jay Cutler, they're all these big, but I've always brought this up, but like, Fields brings a different,
they were never franchise guys.
Yeah. But I mean, to kind of conclude what I was saying, right? Like just, I also think Dalton, you should throw him out there. Like, I think he should start week 1 because he's probably going to get destroyed by that Rams team. And it just kind of adds to the narrative that, okay, Fields is going to take over at some point. But it shouldn't be now, because if Fields starts to fail, that's a huge confidence letdown. We've seen it happen with guys like Josh Rosen. And that's the biggest. Sam Darnold is another guy, right? Like those 2 from the 2018 class. It's bad for mechanics, and it's bad for confidence in general. I mean, we know Fields can handle the pressure, obviously coming from a big, powerful program. But the NFL atmosphere is very different. So I'll pass it on to Jack. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
No, I also agree with what Cutler's saying, but not in this situation. I think it applies very well to a lot of other situations. And I've talked about this before. I've been very vocal that I think that you should not draft a rookie quarterback and play the rookie quarterback unless you have other things in place. Unless you're ready for one, you shouldn't take one.
Do you think Trey Lance should?
No, do I think the situation is
no,
there?
exactly. What Cutler's describing is Trey Lance's situation with San Francisco.
No, I'm gonna get into that in a little bit, but so I don't think that if you don't have a situation in place, you shouldn't, play a rookie quarterback. Like I've talked about, the Sam Darnold, the situation he came into, and same with Josh Rosen, and same with other examples that you can talk about. The situations were not conducive to having a rookie quarterback around, especially in week 1 of an NFL season.
Yeah.
Like they should not have played, and they shouldn't, honestly. Like I would argue, like Miami, I don't know if they should have drafted Tua last year. I think like you pick other people and you get other things in place, and you take Justin Fields this year, and like you wait until you have a developed, franchise tackle, you have a developed wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and you've got, the head coach in place. The Jets and the Cardinals at those times really didn't have any of those, but the Bears, like that's why I don't understand what Cutler is saying. Maybe he's not confident in what he sees, or maybe he just hasn't been paying a lot of attention to the Bears. But I think Matt Nagy is still a good coach. And I think that like it was Trubisky that let him down. I think they've got great weapons, David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen out of the backfield, and Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and Allen Robinson. And their offensive line is above average. It's average to above average. I don't think it's below average. I definitely don't. And they've got Tevin Jenkins coming in.
Hair.
Yeah, I mean, but like, rookie tackle, and then besides Cody Whitehair, I believe, or
James Daniels is one of the
Cody Whitehair, James
guards,
Daniels.
They've got 3 of the 5.
They don't have a good center.
It's an issue. Like Bears fans are also, not happy with what, they kind of like, at least with the full offensive line. They're happy with Tevin. I know I would be too, but
I think the line is okay. But when you've got a good coach and you've got great weapons and an okay line, I do think that situation is conducive to having a rookie quarterback like Justin Fields around. And you bring up the thing with Trey Lance, and Anisha, you brought up Mahomes and Lamar, but Mahomes and Lamar were far more raw quarterback prospects than Justin Fields is. And I think those are the kind of guys that, even if the situation is in place, those are the guys you step back and you let them play. And you know who is that guy? That's Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance is that level of raw like Lamar Jackson was and Patrick Mahomes was. Mm-hmm. And so even though the Niners situation right now is great for a rookie quarterback to come into, Trey Lance needs the time to sit. I don't think Justin Fields needs that time. And, Jay Cutler talked about it like he didn't understand. And, Jay Cutler and Justin Fields are completely different people. Like, I know Jay Cutler wants to bring his own personal opinion into things and his personal experiences, but he's not Justin Fields, and Justin Fields isn't Jay Cutler. So, like, I know we don't know what's going on inside Justin Fields' head, whether he thinks he's prepared, but I think you can't just throw a blanket statement out there like Jay Cutler by saying like, I was really confused when I played, and so Justin Fields will be too. And so I think that when it comes to that, you need to have a situation that's conducive to bringing in a rookie quarterback, and you need to make sure that if that guy is, NFL ready enough to play. And so I think that the Bears have that situation in place. And I think that Justin Fields isn't a raw prospect that needs that much time to play. And the final point I want to make is, Justin Fields for his entire life has been an absolute star. He was, I believe, the number one ESPN 300 quarterback out of high school.
T-Law was one. It was by 0.0001.
Not on ESPN. Trevor Lawrence was a lower rated prospect than Justin Fields. Justin
Fields
so it was
not
the
another.
number.
I think it might have been Max Preps or something because they had like a 0.001.
Okay, but Justin Fields coming out of high school, number one recruit, goes to Georgia. It doesn't work out there, and immediately after not playing one season in Georgia and being behind Jake Fromm, he's out of there. He transferred away to Ohio State, and after that, Heisman hopeful, drafted this high in the draft. There was one time in his career where he was told, no, you're going to wait. And that did not go well. He transferred out of the school. I mean, these guys, if you tell them, yeah, sorry, you're not going to start week 1, what does that do to a guy's confidence? I mean, especially a prodigy like Justin Fields. And I know
it goes different. Like 2 points. I agree with you on the Trey Lance thing, but I think Justin Fields is a little bit different because I was actually going to bring up his college career in the sense that like, he's had to learn different things, right? Like, and how you're saying Jay Cutler and Justin Fields are different. Like, I think Justin Fields is actually like a better, like he has more IQ, football IQ. Like he had to learn a whole new system with Ohio State and right out the gate was able to come out on top.
I mean, it's a pretty easy system to learn.
Yeah, it is an easy system, but I thought he was very productive. Like he was by far the most productive Ohio State quarterback in the last decade with it, 2 years.
Dwayne Haskins was pretty damn productive. It doesn't mean he was good.
I'd say Fields was better than Haskins.
I know, but I'm saying
and he's more talented. You can't deny that.
No, definitely.
Right? Yeah. So, but I think for Fields too, I think the confidence itself also works the other way, right? Like with a very harsh city in Chicago, right? Like if he starts kind of failing,
it's pressure.
All it automatically go, oh, he's not the answer. Like we just don't know because this is the first time again. Like I'm saying, like Chicago usually doesn't pick this low in any draft. They're always kind of mediocre, so they really don't get this type of pick, right? And we saw what happened with Trubisky. I mean, there was a lot of expectation and a lot of flop. So, and it was honestly after the after 2.5 years, people were calling for his job already. So, I mean, even after the rookie year, people were massively disappointed because of what Deshaun Watson was able to do. So I think with Justin Fields, right, and especially in another draft with a lot of quarterbacks who are going to have a lot of chances, right, that's going to start coming up. So I think give him some time. And like I said, I think Dalton can win you some games. I think if the Bears go, 4-6 in those 10, I would honestly, I wouldn't be that mad at that, right? Like, I mean, and Fields starts week 11. Let's say Dalton has a couple of bad games. I mean, would you be happy with a 4-6 record? I would honestly, with Andy Dalton, I don't know if Justin Fields does better than that. So I think in that regard, right, at least it gives Justin Fields, yeah, he doesn't start week 1. You're right. Like in terms of the Georgia transfer, sure, right? Fields would probably not be that happy, but it would honestly be, I think it would be better for him long-term. I think it would give him more time to really learn the system, really get more acclimated with the offense, give him some first team reps. You don't have to fully, take him out from it. But right, like you can over time get more first team reps. We saw that with Tua. We saw that with what's his face? Patrick Mahomes. So like we've seen, first team, even Baker Mayfield had first team reps his rookie year. So I think that's what they should do. That's just my personal opinion. I think Jay Cutler, at least in that regard, is kind of right. But you're right. Like those two are different quarterbacks. And I think Justin Fields would kind of adjust to a Bears playbook a little bit easier.
At the end of the day, as I said in the beginning, it just depends on who you ask. Everyone has like a different, thought on this. So,
and the Bears know Justin Fields better than we do. I mean, they probably know with interviews and him just being around the building, what kind of thing he'd respond to better, whether that's, which one's he going to respond to better? The media, dogging on him because he lost week 1 to the Rams, or them saying, you know what, you're going to wait. Like, we're not starting you week 1. They know. As of now, the best we can make is an educated guess or, an analytically, talked about thing using, past examples. Like, we don't obviously know Justin Fields' personality. Unfortunately, we've never had the opportunity to talk to him. But we want to know what you guys think down in the comment section. For me, I agree with what Jay Cutler said, but I don't think it's best applied in this situation. And I think that there's definitely many ways to go about it. Maybe I agree that Justin Fields shouldn't start week 1, but I don't think it's for the reasons Cutler said, but those reasons definitely do apply to other scenarios. So I think it's kind of just this big knot that we're not going to be able to untie. The Chicago Bears are hoping that they're able to untie it. And, while we like to talk about it here, they probably are the best equipped to know, the best way to handle it, because they know what they want in their offense. They know what they want from Fields, and they know more about Fields than we do. But down in the comments, if you're on YouTube, let us know whether you think Fields should start week 1 or not. Let us know who you think Julio Jones is going to. Let us know what you think about the thing we talked about with Todd Gurley and those trends. If you're on YouTube while you're there, please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button and the notification bell. We've got some more great content coming to you guys soon. If you're listening to this wherever you find your podcasts, please think about subscribing to the show and leaving a 5-star review. It really helps us out, and we'd appreciate your support. But anyways, that's going to do it for us. Also, use code CHG20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. We'll be back to you guys next week with an episode. Let us know also down in the comments what you want us to talk about in that one. But that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you guys so much for listening. We've been the Cold Hard Truth Podcast, and we will see you next time.